In our first mailbag episode of the regular season, I answer questions about early season surprises, early season concerns about some players, and we'll talk about the injuries of Sean Murphy and Orlando Arcia. All that on today's mailbag episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Also, make sure you check out some of my written work over at BravesToday.com. Make sure you follow the podcast on social media at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback that you have for the podcast. If you're new, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. We're approaching 10,000 subscribers there. If you have already, hit that thumbs up button so other people can find the show and join us here at Locked On Braves. If you're listening on the audio version, thank you so much as well for your support of Locked On Braves. And if you're an everydayer, let me know down in the comments section below. I see you there leaving those comments. Thank you so much for doing so. I love the everyday community here that we have at Locked On Braves. We are doing things a little bit differently. Typically, we do our mailbag episodes on Friday, but we had back-to-back off days, so not a ton to talk about right now in terms of game-wise, but wanted to go ahead and have a mailbag episode today, and then on Friday, I'll have an interview with Millard of Locked On Diamondbacks previewing the weekend series at home against the Arizona Diamondbacks, so look for that on Friday morning. But we will do our mailbag podcast today. A lot of great questions, as usual. You submit about 15, 16 questions for this episode that I'm going to try to run through here. First one comes from Chris. He says, who has surprised you the most in the first two series so far? I think for me, I think it's Tyler Matzek is one of them. I didn't know. I talked about this the other day on the postcast with Grant McCauley, which if you haven't checked that out, you can see it over on Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube or in your Locked On Braves podcast feed. But the velocity is just not there for Tyler Matzek. And I think there's a question about this as well, about Matzek later, but he's looked really, really good and really, really dominant, which I didn't think he'd be able to do with the lower velocity. Obviously, anything we're talking about in this first 5 games is small sample size, but he's looked really, really good. I think you obviously have to say Jarred Kelenic as well. It's not that I didn't think that he could do this, but after this start he got off to in spring training, certainly even I had my questions and concerns about him. And then you go out and make the signing of Adam Duvall. You wonder how that's going to affect him personally, psychologically. And he has just come out on fire, ready for every moment. And I love that he's been ready coming off the bench. He's already come off the bench in games he didn't start and gotten a double to lead a rally, gotten a walk, and gotten on base. So, he's been so good. Not only that, his defense as well. So those are probably two of my early surprises. Look, I expected Chris Sale to be good. Obviously expected Strider to be good. Morton, I guess you could say, was a really good surprise as well, just in his first start. But, it's a cold weather and against the Chicago lineup, but, still a great outing from him. I guess you could say one bad surprise is Max Fried, but some of that was out of his control. You weren't going to let him pitch forever in that first inning. And once he didn't get that strike 3 call to Castellanos, you knew it was going to be a short day for him. But those would probably be my two good surprises, is Jarred Kelenic and Tyler Matzek out of the bullpen. Dylan Lee, I think, too, has been fantastic. So those 3 guys in particular stand out to me. Leland Hurt asked, after the first 5 games, what have you seen that confirms or contradicts your preseason analysis of the Braves? I don't think anything. And again, it's 5 games, so it's still very early, but I still see a lineup that up and down can mash. And I know they struggled against Crochet and the White Sox in game 2 of that series. It was blistering cold out there. I'm not going to really take that into too much consideration. And Garrett Crochet is a really good pitcher. I talked about it several times on the podcast to try to prepare you for that. He looked really, really good early on, trying to hit, 97, 98. They brought Kopech in. He's throwing 100. Trying to do that early in the season, trying to do it while it's basically snowing outside is really, really tough. Putting all those excuses aside, in every other game, this offense has looked really good. Even in the Sunday loss to the Phillies, they put up 4 runs. They had a couple of chances to score more in that one, just couldn't come up with a big hit, but they have been in every game. And I think that's exactly what we expected. I think the starting pitching outside of that start from Max Fried was what we expected. Maybe Ronaldo Lopez, Charlie Morton were even better than we expected. The bullpen, I think, has been really, really good. You had the, unfortunate loss to the White Sox where Minter gave up a home run on a ball with a 43-degree launch angle that just got up in the wind and carried out. And then you had a bloop hit given up by Pierce Johnson that led to a run. So, outside of that, I know Aaron Bummer's had his struggles. I think the bullpen has looked really, really good. So nothing I've seen so far has really changed my analysis or opinion of what this Braves team was going to be and could be coming into the season. Large Lars says, is it me or is Ronnie striking out more than last year? I know, small sample size. Certainly feels that way, especially in the last couple of games, starting with that game on Sunday in Philadelphia, where I think he struck out his last 3 at bats. He does seem to be striking out a good bit more. And again, it like you said, it is small sample size, so nothing really to be too concerned with. But I will say this, and he's got a 30.4% strikeout rate. That's even higher than it was going back before last year. One thing I'll say with this, and I think there's another question on this as well, so I'm going to bring this question up first, and then I'll address Ronald further. Kaz Buckeye says, back to me being neurotic about Ronald because he's my favorite. Should I be worried? Tons of ground balls. Ronald can live with a healthy diet of those, but not this many. Seemingly more chase, whiff, and strikeout than last year. Obviously super early, but what are you looking for? I'm not as worried about the ground balls because if he's going to hit a bunch of ground balls and hit them all at 98, 100 mile per hour exit velocity, he's going to get a lot of hits with that. But the strikeouts are the one thing that I am looking at. Like I said, a 30.4% strikeout rate, first 5 games of the season, very small sample size. But before last year, it was 23.4. It was 23.6. Going back to 2020, it was 29.7. Before that, 26.3, 25.3. I mean, he's always been in the mid-20s in strikeout rate. And then last year, it was cut all the way down to 11.4%. And that was just one of the things we marveled about all last season was how he cut his strikeout percent down 10. He cut his strikeout rate down 10%. And so that is something that I'm watching for. Does it regress more back to what we've seen previously in his career, or is he able to still keep that good strikeout rate? Now, I'm not going to judge that based on 5 games, but that is something with Ronald that I'm keeping an eye on is that strikeout rate. And what does that look like? Can he duplicate it? Maybe not 11.4%. That was just absurd what he did last year, but can he keep it under 20? Can he keep it at 16, 17, 18% even is still fantastic in today's game. But that is something with Ronald. I'm not as worried about the ground balls. He's going to get his lift. He's going to get his home runs. He's going to get his extra base hits. That's going to come. And even on the ground balls, he's going to hit them really hard, and plenty of them are going to sneak through, and he's going to be able to get his hits that way. But the strikeout rate, if there's one thing that I'm watching with Ronald this year, can he duplicate the success he had last year putting the ball in play? But a rough couple of stretch. Again, some cold weather games going on there. He also, one thing to keep in mind with Ronald is he missed nearly half of spring training. He didn't get a full spring training to kind of ramp up. Now, he was there the last couple of weeks, and how much does he really need? He basically plays year of round. So, playing in the Venezuelan league. So maybe he doesn't need quite that much, but I think it is worth noting that he missed a good chunk of time in spring training. So maybe he is, it's taking him a little while to get back into the groove of things. But I'm not worried about Ronald in the slightest. But if you were asking me, and you are asking me, what is one thing I'm watching with him, it is that strikeout rate because it was just such a significant drop last year from his career norm. I'm really curious to see if he can keep that up. All right, next, we got some other questions about the bullpen, Minter, Bummer, the injuries, Murphy, and Arcia. I'll answer all of those questions here next. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the Ronald Acuña Jr. or the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. That's ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy your tickets to the next big event, and you don't have to when you use Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. I got my tickets for not the home opener, not going to be able to go to the home opener this year, but for the Saturday game, got my tickets over on Game Time, and I used our code Locked On for $20 off as well. And so can you when you download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. What I love about Game Time is you get the all-in price. You know what you're paying right away. You're not getting to the checkout screen and then all of a sudden these huge fees come in there, raising up the price of what you thought was a really good deal. They give you all-in prices up front. They also show you the view from your seat. Know what you're looking at before you buy your ticket. They got that right there in the Game Time app. So they also have the Game Time guarantee, which means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code Locked On for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume because of all the shouting? Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Mentioned it earlier, but tomorrow I'll have a conversation with Millard Thomas of Locked On Diamondbacks previewing that series, the Braves home opener. On Monday, I'll get you caught up on everything happening at the minor league level. We got AA starting this weekend as well, AAA, its first full week of action, and we'll obviously recap that home opening weekend against the Diamondbacks on Monday. Let's jump back into the questions here. Got several more to get to. Randy says, should we be worried about Minter and Bummer? They haven't seemed very sharp so far. In the case of Minter, has he really not looked that sharp? I mean, the ball that Paul DeJong hit out, again, it was a 43-degree launch angle that I think just got up in the wind and took off. I didn't think it was that terrible of the pitch. I'll say the same thing about Minter I said last year, though. I think he needs to be more reliant on that fastball to get ahead and using that cutter out of the zone to put batters away. His cutter, it's not a Chris Martin cutter. It's not a Kenley Jansen cutter. It's not the cutter that it was 4 or 5 years ago. It gets hit when it's out over the plate. It needs to be used as a put-away pitch off the plate. That said, I think he's looked fine in his first couple of outings. His first outing in particular, I know he looked very good. For Aaron Bummer, like I talked about this with Sean Anderson on the podcast on Wednesday. If you haven't listened to that, go give it a listen, as he's obviously follows the White Sox and very familiar with Bummer and Ronaldo Lopez and had some good insight on both of those guys. And he just said, that's the Aaron Bummer experience. He gets a lot of ground balls, and there's going to be games where balls just sneak through. There's going to be games where he doesn't have command. He's going to walk a batter. One of those ground balls is going to get through the infield, and it's going to lead to a big inning. It can be a frustrating experience with Aaron Bummer. I talked about Dylan Lee and Tyler Matzik earlier and how they've surprised in a good way so far. At this point, I think they've passed Aaron Bummer in the pecking order. Look, I think Aaron Bummer is still gonna be a good arm for the Braves, and I think he's going to come in and get some tough outs against lefties. Also, in that game on Sunday, he should have been out of there by the time Alec Boehm came up to bat and got that go-ahead hit, but just because of what happened on Saturday, he probably didn't have as many arms available, and it's the third game of the season, so you're not sitting here life or death on every game. I think both of those guys will be fine. I'm not worried about any of them in the slightest. Coach says, thoughts on Matzik so far? Seems like the velocity is dialed back, but it's given him more control. I haven't necessarily noticed the better control aspect of it, but the velocity is definitely dialed back, and he's still able to do really good things. Again, he's looked really good so far in the early going. We'll see if that is able to be maintained. I talked about it on here before, even going back to 2022 when he had the injuries, it was still a really good ERA. I mean, the numbers were still pretty solid. He had a 3.50 ERA, 1.26 whip, but just 36 strikeouts and 43 and 2/3 innings. Whereas going back to 2021, he had 77 strikeouts and 63 innings. So, and it's early this year, he has 3 strikeouts and 2 1/3, a 1.29 whip. So I don't know that really correlates to the better command aspect of it. He's given up 2 hits. He's walked 1 batter in 2 1/3 innings. I mean, we'll see. I'm still skeptical that he's going to be able to be that dominant setup man in the 7th and 8th inning. And luckily, the Braves don't need him to be that. They just need him to be a lefty that can come in the 5th, 6th inning, get out some tough lefties. Maybe the other team has a couple of lefties coming up that inning and be able to kind of manage that middle part of the game. And so far, he's doing a really good job of that. So we'll see, how things play out. It's 2 1/3 innings. It's 2 appearances, but even in spring training, he looked really good. And in the early part of the season, he's looked good as well. So hopefully he's able to maintain that. Pat says, what are your thoughts now compared to the offseason with the departure of Eddie Rosario? I know we're only 5 games in, but do you think the platoon of Duvall Kelenic will be just as good or better than what Rosario would have produced this season? Why or why not? I do think the platoon of Duvall and Kelenic will be at least just as good as it would have been with Rosario and Duvall. Couple of reasons for that. The defense, in my opinion, is much better. I know the Nationals are playing Rosario in center field. I know maybe some of the analytics say that Rosario is not as bad defensively as Braves fans believe, but he's not good. I will say that. The arm maybe is a bit decent, but we've already seen the defense pay off for Kelenic and a great catch he made in the left center field gap to rob Bryce Harper. Duvall, we know, is a really good defender. So I think right there, just defensively alone, I think that's a bit of an upgrade. And I think if Kelenic gets enough at bats, I think he's going to get to 20 home runs, and I think he's going to hit 250, 260. And that's probably what you would have expected from Eddie Rosario this season. So I think that platoon is going to be just as good. And I know it's more expensive for this season with what the Braves had to take on in the contracts to get Jarred Kelenic. But going forward, I mean, he's going to be making very little money. It's going to be monetarily a really good move for the Braves as well. And hopefully he proves throughout this year that he can play every day. And you don't need a platoon for him going forward. That's certainly my hope, and I'm sure it's the Braves' hope as well. Jason says, if Arcia is out a significant amount of time, what is the Braves' plan at shortstop? Would it be Fletcher? I do think, and I said this in spring training, if anything happens to Arcia and he's out for a good bit of time, I think David Fletcher is the first man up. Now, it is somewhat notable that in the games at AAA so far, at least the ones that I've looked at, Luke Waddell has been playing at shortstop and David Fletcher has been at second base. I still think it would be Fletcher that gets the call up to get the majority of the starts at shortstop, even over Luis Guillorme, who's already on the 26-man roster. So I do think it would be David Fletcher. That said, it sounds like the Arcia injury is not big. It sounds like he could have played on Wednesday. If they did end up playing, sounds like he was fine. So I think he'll be okay for this home opener. I think he'll be back in the lineup on Friday. Nancy says, now that Sean is on the IL for a while, do you think AA is going to extend Travis again? I remember last year how relieved Travis was that they did it early in the season. He's a great guy, and the Braves can afford to pay a little more for a backup catcher as good as he is. I thought this would be the last year for Travis d'Arnaud. I really did. Getting up there in age, he wasn't nearly as productive last season at the plate. I think pitchers like throwing to him. I think he calls a good game, and he's become a good pitch framer. His arm is not nearly as good as Sean Murphy's, although he did throw out Nicky Lopez the other day, which was nice to see. He is a really good backup catcher and a great veteran to have. He's a leader, one of the leaders on this team. I don't think you have to do that now. I think you let the season play out. Travis d'Arnaud is somebody who's had a lot of injuries himself throughout his career. Yeah, I think if they were to bring Travis d'Arnaud back, it'd be because he had another solid year as a backup catcher. He was able to stay healthy, and he wants to give it another go. But I think you can do that either later in the year or in the offseason. I don't think there's a need to do it now at the beginning of the year. All right, I got more questions to get into, some fun ones as well, talking about my favorite movies, some thoughts on A.J. Smith-Shawver and Hurston Waldrep, who could be better and more impactful this year. We'll answer those here next. PrizePicks is your best place for daily fantasy baseball. You got March Madness as well. You got Final Four coming up this weekend. You can be a part of the action on PrizePicks for both men's and women's college basketball. PrizePicks offers injury insurance. So that means you got a player in your entry. They get hurt in the first half. They don't come back in the second half. You just pull that player off your entry and your entry stays alive. So you got that bit of protection there. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts. And PrizePicks is really simple to play. I can make my picks, submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. You got the Major League Baseball season here as well, and there's plenty of options there to pick more or less on some of your favorite players like Spencer Strider. I'm sure on Friday morning you look there, they're going to have a line for Spencer Strider, strikeouts that you can pick more or less at. Just looking at the lines here on Thursday, they have Michael Soroka at 3.5 strikeouts. I don't think he struck out a single batter in his first outing. So you may want to go on there, take the under on that against the Kansas City Royals. They got other more or less options in there, and that's all you really got to do. Pick 2 to 6 players or groups of players, decide if you think they'll have more or less on certain stats like strikeouts, hits, home runs, and so much more. And now you can download the app today. Use our code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. All right, got a couple more questions to get to, then we'll get to some of the news and preview Friday's game. Steve Lamb says, who do you think will have a better MLB career, hopefully in a Braves uniform, A.J. Smith-Shawver or Hurston Waldrep? Good question. A question probably a lot of Braves fans are wondering right now. I ranked Hurston Waldrep at the top of my prospect rankings to begin the season. I do think he has the better likelihood of becoming a big league starting pitcher for a while. I think he has better command of that splitter than any pitch that A.J. Smith-Shawver has. At least what I saw last year at Florida, he can lose it sometimes, but both of these guys have command issues. But that splitter is just such a difference maker for Hurston Waldrep. Look, there's a chance that both of these guys end up in a bullpen role, and both are really good in a bullpen role. I've also seen Hurston Waldrep be able to carry his velocity deeper into outings than I have A.J. Smith-Shawver. I'll say this, though. For a guy who had an ERA over 10 in spring training, I came away really impressed with A.J. Smith-Shawver because of the development of that changeup. And if he can get the feel back on the slider and he can continue to command the fastball up in the zone, I'm really excited about who A.J. Smith-Shawver can be. And I was already really excited about who A.J. Smith-Shawver can be. Certainly the Braves are hoping that both of these guys break through this year, prove that they can be part of the rotation going forward, because the Braves need some answers in that rotation. But if you're asking me right now, based on the information we have, who do I think will have the better MLB career? I'm going to go with Waldrep, but it's really, really close with these two guys. Caden Hurd, who's someone you think could possibly be traded to get a high-power lefty with big velocity that could hit the hundreds if needed? I mean, the Braves could trade Owen Murphy. I mean, it obviously depends on who it is, how much control they have. I mean, the only guy that comes to mind right now is Gregory Soto, and obviously the Phillies are not planning on being sellers at the deadline, so I'm not sure what high-powered lefty you have in mind that would be available. But I think an Owen Murphy could grab a reliever like that. I think he certainly brings back enough draw for that. J. Cho says, who do you think can get sent down first to make room for either Lopez in the bullpen, Kerr, Perdomo, and or Giles, Jesse Chavez, or Dylan Lee? They both serve the same purpose. One is just a long man from the left side. First of all, why are we trying to move down Jesse Chavez or Dylan Lee? Why are we trying to move Lopez out of the rotation after he just had a good start? Kerr hasn't really done anything. Perdomo's not going to be ready at all this year. He's out for the entire season. Giles, Daysbel Hernandez, I mean, those are guys I think are next on the list to be called up, but there's no need to do that right now. And these things will play it'll play itself out. Once these guys are needed, there will be room for them. So I don't see a need to move any of these guys down at the moment to make room. I don't see any need to take Lopez out of the rotation anytime soon. Ed Helinsky, to honor this weekend's WrestleMania 40, which current Braves could make good pro wrestling heels? I don't know what pro wrestling heels are. I don't know anything about WrestleMania. I'm sorry to disappoint you. I think I've maybe watched one wrestling event on TV. I've been to a couple of wrestling events in the small town where I grew up, but I have really no knowledge of wrestling. And today, I'll say this, though. What I do know about wrestlers, I think Jackson Stevens would make for a pretty good wrestler. I would love to see him in some sort of wrestling event like that. So I'll go with Jackson Stevens. The last one from Impact, he says, 2 questions just for fun. What's your favorite baseball movie of all time? And 2, baseball record you think will never be broken? The Cal Ripken consecutive games played record will never be broken. That's a pretty cool one, too. I remember where I was at for that one. I remember sitting in my parents' living room back home where I grew up, watching that and seeing the numbers on the brick behind the stadium out in right field. Just a really cool moment that I won't forget, and also a record that will never be broken. And what's your favorite baseball movie of all time? I got to go with Field of Dreams. I mean, just the idea of him getting to play catch with his father one more time. Me, obviously, special time in my life. Getting to play catch, with my father growing up, still able to do so today. That moment's always going to get me in that movie. So Field of Dreams up there. But an underrated one for me, Fever Pitch. It's usually the one me and my wife watch together at the beginning of every baseball season. Really funny one. So that's kind of an underrated one I don't hear many people talk about. Thanks for all the questions that were submitted. Great ones as usual. Thank you so much for sending those in. Friday is the home opener. Give you a little bit of a preview. We'll talk more about it on Friday's episode when I have my conversation with Millard. But right now it's looking like Spencer Strider versus Tommy Henry. Looking like the Braves are going to avoid at least Merrill Kelly in this series, possibly Zach Gallen as well, if the Diamondbacks want to stay on rotation. So they could miss both of those guys in this series, which would be a huge break for the Braves. And they don't have Jordan Montgomery ready yet. I believe there's another pitcher that's eluding me at the moment that is also not ready to pitch for the Diamondbacks. So the Braves might be getting them at the right time. But Strider versus Tommy Henry, Strider's going to be on extra rest for this one, so he should be geared up and ready to go. That Diamondbacks lineup's been really, really good, though. They put up some huge numbers. Now, they did a lot of that against the Rockies, but they also played a really good series against the Yankees. They lost that one, but it was a really tight series against the Yankees teams that's hot at the moment. As for Tommy Henry, left-handed, not a left-handed Garrett Crochet. Should be a really good matchup for this Braves offense. Henry has a 4.76 career ERA in 140 innings. He gave up 5 earned in 4 innings against the Rockies, his first start of the year. So you got Strider on the mound going against a lefty who doesn't have a lot of big league success. Feels like a very good likely outcome for the Atlanta Braves on the home opener on Friday. A little bit of news. Huascar Ynoa was good on Wednesday. 4 innings, 2 hits, 1 walk, no earned, 2 strikeouts. Would like to see, obviously, some more strikeouts, but to see him to be able to go 4 innings, it's very encouraging for Ynoa. JP Martinez, Eli White stayed hot. We'll talk more about them on Miners Monday episode. Josh Young for the Rangers out 8 to 10 weeks. That's somewhat significant for the Braves as they're going to face the Rangers here pretty soon. Joey Bart traded to the Pirates for right-handed pitcher Austin Strickland. Joey Bart, top draft pick a couple of years ago, hasn't really been able to figure it out. Pirates need some help at the catcher position. The Dodgers claimed Taylor Trammell. They also called up Dinelson Lamet. These are 2 guys who were once really promising players, up-and-coming prospects. Lamet had a good run with the Padres and ran into some injuries. Taylor Trammell, really good outfield prospect. Whenever I see the Dodgers pick up guys like this, similar to when you see the Braves take chances on guys like this, you really got to watch out to see what they can do. And Lamet comes in and gets the save on Wednesday night, his first appearance with the Dodgers since getting called up. So I thought I'd mention that as 2 guys that again, the Dodgers just do a really good job over there. Again, as do the Braves of getting these guys kind of reclamation projects and helping them getting their career back on track. All right, that will do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Just want to let you know one more time, Locked On's launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day. Tomorrow, we'll have our conversation with Millard Towers of Locked On Diamondbacks. And then on Monday, we'll recap the home opening weekend and also go through our Minors Monday segment, let you know what's going on down on the farm. Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Braves on YouTube. If you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button. Make sure that you follow us on social media at LockedOn_Braves and at Shortstop Ball. And make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. And we will talk to you next time.